With a coordinated effort, they managed to carry Ben to a separate area, locking the door behind them. Emily felt a mix of relief and dread as she watched him struggle against the restraints. Once Ben was secured, Emily returned to the main room, trying to regain her composure. "We need to find a way to stabilize him," she said, addressing the crowd. "We can't let him suffer like this. We have to understand how the virus works. We can start by looking at his blood samples again," Joan suggested. "We need to identify any weaknesses in the virus and see if we can create a treatment." Emily nodded, her mind racing with possibilities. They would need more data, but she felt a sense of urgency. If they could stabilize Ben, they might be able to discover a way to reverse the effects of the virus. As they delved deeper into their research, Emily and her team focused on understanding the viral strain and its mutations. They experimented with potential treatments based on the data they collected from Ben and the water samples. The process was painstaking, filled with setbacks and moments of despair. But through it all, Emily felt the community rallying around her. Volunteers brought supplies, and townspeople shared their own experiences, each new detail adding to the growing picture of the virus's spread. One evening, while poring over the data, Emily noticed a pattern that piqued her interest. The virus appeared to have a correlation with certain environmental factors, specifically, the levels of specific pesticides found in the contaminated water. "This could be it," she said, excitement bubbling within her. "If we can find a way to neutralize the pesticides in the water supply, we might be able to slow down the virus's spread." With renewed determination, Emily called an emergency meeting to present her findings. As the townspeople gathered, she shared her research on the pesticides and the potential impact on the virus. "We need to focus on cleaning up the water supply," she urged. "If we can reduce the pesticide levels, it may give us the time we need to develop a treatment for those infected." The townspeople listened intently, their fear shifting to hope. "How can we help?" someone asked. "We need volunteers to assist with the cleanup process. We'll coordinate efforts to filter the water from the river and ensure everyone has access to clean water," Emily replied. Mark stepped forward, his face resolute. "I'll organize the farmers to help with the cleanup. If we can rally the community, we can do this together." In the following days, a massive community effort took shape. Volunteers from every corner of Pine Hollow came together, armed with buckets, hoses, and makeshift filtration systems. They worked tirelessly to clean the river and filter the water supply, a united front against the invisible enemy threatening their town. As the sun rose each day, the sounds of laughter and determination filled the air, drowning out the whispers of fear that had once dominated Pine Hollow. Emily organized teams, each focusing on specific areas, collecting samples, setting up filtration systems, and monitoring the water quality. The sense of community was palpable, with neighbors encouraging one another and sharing stories of hope and resilience. Despite the hard work, Emily couldn't shake a lingering worry. While the cleanup was essential, the reality of the virus's mutations weighed heavily on her mind. She needed to ensure that the progress they were making would be enough to stave off the impending doom. Late one night, as she analyzed the latest water samples in the makeshift lab, her phone buzzed with a message from Ben. It was brief but alarming. "The symptoms are changing. More aggressive. We need to figure this out fast." Asterisk. Her heart sank. The virus was evolving, and time was running out. Emily gathered her notes and prepared for the next community meeting, where she would need to share Ben's warning and encourage further efforts. At the meeting, The atmosphere was a mix of determination and anxiety. Emily stood before the crowd, the weight of their hopes resting on her shoulders. "We've made progress with the water cleanup, but we're facing new challenges. Ben's symptoms are changing. We need to stay vigilant and adapt our strategies." Concern rippled through the crowd. "What can we do?" someone called out. Emily took a deep breath. "We need to establish a network for monitoring the health of everyone in Pine Hollow. If we can track symptoms and any new cases, we can respond more quickly." Mark chimed in. "I'll set up a system for reporting symptoms. If everyone can check in regularly, we'll have a better understanding of how the virus is spreading." As the meeting concluded, Emily felt a flicker of hope. They were coming together, and every small action mattered. But deep down, she knew they were still racing against an unseen clock. In the days that followed, the community's resolve was tested. Reports of new infections began trickling in, and the mutations Ben warned about became increasingly apparent. Some infected showed heightened aggression, while others experienced rapid deterioration. Determined to learn more, Emily and her team doubled their efforts in the lab. They analyzed samples from the sick, looking for clues in the viral RNA. Patterns began to emerge, suggesting that the virus was adapting not only to its hosts but also to the environment they were working so hard to cleanse. Then, one fateful evening, they received a breakthrough. A water sample revealed not only high levels of pesticides but also traces of a chemical used to enhance their potency. This wasn't just an accident. It was a deliberate act that had amplified the virus's effects. This isn't just about cleaning the water anymore, Emily realized, her heart racing. We need to investigate who's behind this. With Mark and a small group of trusted volunteers, she set out to uncover the source of the contamination. They followed leads that pointed to the local pesticide company, a business that had long operated under the radar, known for pushing the limits of safety regulations. As they dug deeper, the stakes grew higher. The town was not just facing a biological threat, they were up against a potential conspiracy that could change their lives forever. Emily knew they had to expose the truth, not only to protect Pine Hollow but to find a way to combat the virus that was becoming increasingly deadly. "Let's go," she said, determination etched on her face. "We're not just fighting for our survival anymore. We're fighting for justice." With that, they set off into the night, ready to confront the dark forces that threatened their community, armed with courage, hope, and the growing strength of a united Pine Hollow. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the town square of Cedar Grove. Inside the community center, Emily stood before a hastily assembled group of leaders, her heart racing with a mixture of urgency and fear. Sheriff Mike Jennings leaned against the wall, arms crossed, his face etched with skepticism. Mayor Linda Hart, a pragmatic woman with years of experience, sat at the head of the table, her brow furrowed in concern. The room buzzed with tension as they awaited Emily's report. "Thank you all for coming," Emily began, her voice steady despite the dread pooling in her stomach. "I've gathered some information about the strange illness affecting our community. It's not just the flu, it seems to be something much worse." Before she could delve deeper into her findings, the door swung open with a bang, crashing against the wall. Jim Hargrove, a local farmer known for his resilience, stumbled into the room, panting heavily. Blood smeared across his face and arms, and his clothes were torn and soiled. Panic radiated from him, a palpable force that sent a shiver through everyone present. "Help! They're coming! We have to do something!" Jim shouted, his voice cracking. "What are you talking about, Jim?" Sheriff Jennings stepped forward, concern now etched into his features. "Who's coming?" "The townsfolk," Jim gasped, clutching his side as if to hold himself together. "They're not themselves. They're attacking anyone they see." A murmur of disbelief swept through the room. Mayor Hart stood, her composure faltering. "You mean they're violent? Is this a joke?" "No joke." Jim's eyes darted around the room, wide and desperate. "They're not just sick. They're like monsters. I saw them in the fields, dragging people down. We need to barricade the doors." At that moment, a loud crash echoed from outside, followed by frantic shouts and screams. The sound of shuffling footsteps grew nearer, an ominous rhythm that set everyone on edge. Emily's heart raced as she exchanged frantic glances with the sheriff and the mayor. "Everyone, stay calm," Sheriff Jennings ordered, though his voice held an edge of urgency. "Jim, tell us what happened." Jim shook his head, his breathing rapid. "I was out in the fields when I saw them, people from town. At first, I thought they were just sick. Then they turned on me. I barely got away." Before he could continue, the door to the community center burst open, revealing a scene straight out of a nightmare. A horde of disheveled townsfolk staggered inside, their faces pale, eyes vacant, and mouths twisted into snarls. They lunged forward, arms outstretched as they moved with a terrifying, unrelenting force. "Get back!" Jennings shouted, pulling his sidearm and taking aim. The crack of the gunshot split the air, sending one of the attackers sprawling to the ground. The body lay still, but the rest of the mob pressed forward, undeterred. "Barricade the doors," Emily screamed, adrenaline surging through her veins. She dashed to the nearest exit, shoving a table against it as Mayor Hart rushed to help. Jim stumbled back, his face a mask of horror as he watched the chaos unfold. "Why won't they stop?" he gasped, backing away from the advancing horde. "Because they're not themselves," Emily shouted, her mind racing for solutions. "They're infected. We need to protect ourselves until we can figure out what's happening." Sheriff Jennings continued to fire, his shots ringing out in the confined space, but the attackers were relentless. They clawed and screamed, their bodies crashing into the furniture as they sought to breach the sanctuary of the community center. Emily grabbed a heavy chair, ready to defend herself. The leaders scrambled to fortify the remaining entrances, fear transforming into raw determination. Emily caught Mayor Hart's eye. The mayor nodded, a silent agreement passing between them. They needed to fight back, to rally the remaining townsfolk and stand their ground. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the side of the building. A window shattered, sending shards of glass flying into the air. An infected man climbed through, blood streaming from his arms. He landed awkwardly, but quickly regained his footing, eyes locking onto Emily with an unfocused, terrifying hunger.